Hey, what's up guys? I'm Brian. This is Tech Therapy. Thank you so much for watching. Today's video is on Sony, which just concluded their amazing 2023 TV year. However, they do have one more release, one more secret TV that they're dropping for everyone just in time for the holiday season. I'm joined today by Sony's very own Rob Brennan, who you've seen on the channel many times. Love talking to Rob, and he is here to explain this brand new edition from Sony. I hope you enjoy, and thank you so much for watching. Hey, what's up guys? I'm here with Sony's Rob Brennan. Rob, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. I'm so happy to be here. It's been too long since we sat down and had one of these, so I'm excited to chat with you today.
It has been a very long time. And first, let me start by saying bravo to an amazing year from Sony, starting with the X93, X95, X90, A80L was in there, which is what I want to discuss today. And finally, the Master Series A75L QD-OLED. Bravo to you and the entire company. Amazing displays all around. But it's not the last TV that you guys are going to release this year, is it?
No, that's right. And yeah, I appreciate the kudos. I will take full credit, obviously.
I knew you would.
For everything from design to building them by myself in my garage. But really, I want to say, I really appreciate that. We obviously are always excited to bring new products to the market, and we're thrilled with the reception that the entire Bravia XR lineup received from all of the media, from people on YouTube doing the great content you do, to every other outlet really talking about what Sony brought to market this year. So we're excited to keep it coming. We're almost finished. Yeah. As you mentioned, just a couple more TVs to get out the door, but there's kind of a fall surprise, let's say.
Well, talking lastly about the A95L, quickly touching on the Master Series, which cast a large shadow of the entire TV universe this year, as a lot of people didn't know what to purchase with the Master Series releasing. I do personally feel that one of the best TVs released this year was overlooked, which was the Sony A80L, as being versatile, picture quality, and all the processing that Sony brings this year. And we've mentioned at times processing becomes market speak. Not really ever with you guys, but this year it was a clear step up in terms of clarity and the three-dimensional image. This other TV you're about to discuss, I feel, is going to reinvigorate that TV that I feel was overlooked.
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. When you have a television, Master Series TV from Sony, you have this, new technology, QD-OLED. It's only been in the market. This is the second year. It casts a very large shadow. And so, a lot of TVs have a hard time kind of getting out from under that. Obviously, it was a little bit easier, I think, for the mini LEDs because the platform is different. Yep. So we can talk about, how well they handle kind of brightness and low luminance and the significant improvements we've even made to full array local dimming with the X90L. But with the A80L, it's kind of like, hey, I'm an OLED too. And it's like, okay, yeah, but we want to wait to see what this other, version of OLED is bringing. And so, yeah, we're thrilled to bring kind of we'll call it a little brother to the A80L that we think is going to be, very exciting for people, and just give them more options as we roll into kind of the early holiday season for this year.
And what we're going to talk about here is the A75L OLED. And there are differences from the A80L. But before we introduce it, Rob, I want to talk about when the A80L released among YouTubers and influencers. It wasn't brought up much because of MLA and QD-OLED and all the hype with that. Though the A80J was a huge hit, A80K was a huge hit, the A80L kind of was thrown out there in between other releases, mostly the mini LEDs like the X95 and the X93. And it was sitting there at Value Electronics, and I almost didn't review it. There just didn't seem to be a lot of interest. And what a mistake. The video that I put out was the most overlooked TV of the year. And I was shocked at the clarity and how good the TV is, and I do recommend it all the time. So my hope in the A75 is not only to discuss it, but to also to rekindle or reinvigorate the A80L, which I think is an amazing option that a lot of people are overlooking that really love that Sony processing and clarity and audio. that's when you first told me about this TV. I was like, okay, we're not only going to talk about this, let's get the A80L back in it. So please tell me what the new addition is and what the differences are.
Absolutely. But before I do, I want to add one comment, and I think this will help kind of, and I'm sure you already came to this conclusion, but any of your viewers, why when you first turned on that A80L, it stood out to you so immediately. We talk about XR clear image as the new processing kind of trick for extra sharpness, but you got to remember the fundamental, most important factor of picture quality is contrast. And so with OLED, you get that perfect pixel to pixel contrast reproduction. You add to that this extra processing of XR clear image, and you get a sense of depth and texture and realism that is really difficult to see or to really understand until you see it, kind of the first time. And so that's the reason why I think it jumped out at you. But yes, let's talk about the A75L. And so let's get a couple of the basic kind of facts out of the way. It is a WRGB OLED, so it's the same OLED technology, basically same panel technology as in the A80L. It is running the exact same processor, so that's Sony's Cognitive XR processor. We were just talking about XR clear image. It includes that upgrade to the processor. As a matter of fact, from a processing feature perspective, the two televisions are doing the same thing. So from a picture quality perspective, A75 and A80L are punching in the same weight class. That is what they're doing. But what we thought is, are there other features or other aspects of the television that customers maybe are okay with taking a little bit of a back seat? Mm-hmm. And ultimately, that would enable us to bring this other model in at a slightly lower price point and get more people interested in Sony OLEDs. So let's talk about kind of what makes the two TVs different. First, from a size perspective, the A80L is available from 55, 65, 77, and 83. So, all of the major medium to large OLED sizes. For the A75L, it is exclusively going to be available in 55 and 65 inch. Now, those are like the most popular TV sizes. But for people that are shopping in the the larger kind of screen size, that's what the A80L is still going to be kind of where we're going to draw your attention. Or mini LED or some other platform if you're hard and set on a 70-inch class or an 80-inch class. The other difference between the A80L and the A75L is the audio kind of solution. Now, Sony OLEDs forever have used voice coil actuators that vibrate the panel in the television. With the A80L, we use 3 of them. So there's a left, a center, and a right. So 3 actuators, and then a pair of rear firing subwoofers. So it's a very robust, well-rounded audio solution. Mm-hmm. With the A75, we're using stereo, so just left and right. So 2 voice coil actuators, and then 2 kind of traditional down-firing, full-range speakers. So the audio is what if I'm comparing the two, I would say the A80L has the slight advantage in TV audio. But in terms of, can it do Dolby Atmos? Yes, they both do Dolby Atmos. Can it do, pass through DTS? Yes, it can pass through DTS. It can do all those same kind of audio tricks. Even Sony's acoustic center sync that allows us to combine or offload some of the center channel from your soundbar or from your Sony receiver to the TV. So the TV kind of acts as this additional center speaker. That is included in the A75L. So it's just the specific speaker configuration difference between the two. Moving on to design a little bit, one of the other differences. With a lot of the Sony models these days, we have multiple stand configurations. So either 2 or 3. Typically, we'll have a standard or kind of wide stance, a narrow stance, and then it might be an elevated position or what we call soundbar position. For the A75L, it's just a single stand position. So again, if you're wall mounting it, and it doesn't matter that you have 3 or 1 or 200 stand positions, it's like if that calculus doesn't matter to you, it's like, there you go. Or if just a standard kind of television normal seated position kind of works in the A75, can make sense there. The last difference is in just one of the Google Assistant features. So all of the Bravia XR models, so that's X90L and above, have a built-in microphone in the TV. It's disabled by default. But if you want your TV to always be listening, and you can use that special, Google phrase to wake it up and ask questions or, tell it to do stuff, you can have it always be listening. And so we call that the built-in microphone. So in addition, all of the Sony remotes have, the Google Assistant microphone button here. So you can talk to the remote instead, kind of on demand. The A75L has the microphone built into the remote, but it does not have the microphone built into the TV.
Interesting.
So that's, again, we pull an extra microphone out of the television. We pull a little bit of the kind of the logic and the processing to kind of manage it, and we shave a couple of bucks there. And that's the end of the list of differences. So
but what I like about it, Rob, is if you're going to shave a few things off, and it's not picture quality, and the sound quality is still very good. I'm sure a lot of people didn't realize the microphone has that ability within the TV.
Sure, yeah.
So I like the fact that you'll have, when it does officially launch, I know it will be a better value. And I like that it's at 55. I'm a big TV guy as far as larger TVs.
Right.
The biggest complaint with Sony's lineup this year was the amazing X95 only had one size in the US. And people were left with, where's the 55 and 65? So people seeing a little bit more love to the 55 and 65 is very much appreciated. But that processing that you were speaking about, the XR, go a little bit more detail for me with that, because I will tell you that even settings like reality creation that a lot of people love and use with the A80L and all of Sony's lineup this year, especially the A80L, I was able to max that without any aliasing or noise. And I've never been able to do that even with the Z9K. So that processing is doing a little something. Can you give us a little more detail on what the XR Clear is doing? Because where I feel like the other companies were just about to catch up to the processing, you guys went and outdid yourselves again. And that's where I think the A80L is kind of that stepchild that has that built in, that's not getting the love.
Yeah, it's a good question. So ultimately, to pull back the curtain a little bit, right? The way that televisions typically kind of operate from a processing perspective is there are different steps that a TV will take based on the condition of the incoming video, right? So we're pretty much all talking 4K TVs here, so let's just pretend everything's a 4K TV, right? So there's a different set of steps that the TV will go through if you are watching 4K content. If you're watching high definition content, a different set of steps. If it's standard definition, different steps. 24 frames per second, different steps. HDR versus SDR, different steps. And so one of the biggest challenges is the way that EDID, or electronic device identification, works is your television will tell the source device, whether your PlayStation or your Blu-ray player or your Roku or whatever, or in the case of the built-in apps, it will tell the streaming service, hey, here's what I am. I am a 4K HDR 120 hertz television. Do your worst, right? And then, let's just say Netflix goes, yeah, no problem. And it will output oftentimes that format, except you're trying to watch the original Pitch Black, right? You want to do a little, Vin Diesel back in the day. He's got to wear crazy sunglasses, right? Having a great, one of my guilty pleasures.
Underrated movie, by the way.
Right, totally underrated. Totally underrated. So, but that's not a 4K movie. It's not an HDR movie, right? And so what can happen, not in every case, but it often is the case, that the source modifies the content to match the TV's capabilities. And so now the TV thinks, oh, great, I'm watching a 4K HDR film. And so it goes to the 4K HDR steps. But it would be more accurate and you'd get a better picture if instead it went through the high definition SDR process instead, because that's what the content actually is. And so what XR Clear Image does is it's really two things. First, it's a better detective, right? it doesn't believe you when you say, hey, here's 4K HDR. It goes, I'm going to check. I'm going to
ask a few more questions, Rob.
Yeah, I know. It's like, I don't know about
Columbo. It's like, wait a minute.
So it does a whole kind of Knives Out kind of thing. And it's like, I'm going to get to the bottom of this.
Yeah.
And it is able to determine what the actual kind of native condition of the content is, if it's been modified or if it is in fact, natively whatever the flag says it is. Mm-hmm. And then the TV can pass it through the right process. And then on the other step that it has is a superior noise reduction filter that is better at detecting the difference between kind of natural analog film grain that you expect or that is digitally kind of added because it's completely random versus compression noise, whether that's, bitrate starved compression noise or, dot crawl, mosquito noise, all these various kind of artifacts. Yeah. It's a better filter for those items as well. So better detective, helps the processor make a better decision in terms of how to process that incoming signal, and then a better kind of a noise filter on the back end. So the result is a very sharp, clear image without, and you've seen this before in some TVs, that artificial sharpness that you can get and you can tell that it's there. Yeah. You get the sharpness with XR Clear Image, but not the artificiality that comes from kind of faking it and making something appear sharper rather than just removing all the junk so that the natural sharpness can shine through. That's what XR Clear Image really is doing. And when you combine that, as I mentioned earlier, with the pixel by pixel kind of that perfect contrast, foundation, it's not exactly the same on a mini LED, but again, very advanced backlight LCDs and OLEDs can maximize the potential of XR Clear Image. Certainly the X90 benefits from it as well, but as your platform from a contrast perspective improves, more of that XR Clear Image benefit can be resolved in kind of the end result.
Which I would tell you, it sounds a little ridiculous, but what you'd said about the micro contrast of an OLED, like obviously I know that, but when I think about XR Clear in tandem with an OLED, whether it's the A80, which again is our WRGB OLEDs, when I saw how clear it was, now I spent that same day with the X95, which I think is the best all-around mini LED or LED that Sony's ever produced. Oh, God forbid the Z9D crew and that whole thing. I just think
don't tell them.
Yeah, don't tell them. It's still a legend. I think I know you have like 3 of them. But when I turned on the A80L, it wasn't placebo. But the way you're explaining it, I do realize that I never thought of XR Clear in tandem going even further with OLED or QD-OLED, which also speaks more highly of the A95L. But to get that same magic with an OLED like the A80L or the A75 is really what made me more exciting about this conversation. Not just the fact that there was just one more model, but that the A80L, which I do think, again, people aren't looking at. It's almost like they don't even know it exists. And there was some talk recently about the 83-inch A80L having more A90J characteristics. I know you can speak on that a little bit for me. But I feel like was grossly overlooked, and I hope the A75 makes you price compare the two of them and then reinvigorates the A80L as well, because the A95L, as amazing as it is a Master Series. It's the only real Master Series this year from Sony. So it's going to be at a premium, but I do feel that group out there that wants the highest end picture quality, as you've mentioned, you've seen it against some of the best OLEDs in the world, the A80 and the A75, and it did really, really well.
Yeah, I know. I agree. I think that this year, QD-OLED being so relatively new, there's a lot of interest, and there's a significant improvement just from year 1 to year 2. So you kind of have that, and then of course with MLA technology that's also available in like ultra premium, WRGB or standard RGB OLED televisions. It's easy to kind of look past the rest of the kind of OLED kind of part. And quite frankly, that's where most consumers are shopping. That's the reality.
Well, yeah. Could we ever imagine that the OLEDs would be overlooked Like, oh, it's just an OLED.
Well, kind of, and that's all. But I'll tell you, here's only because I remember years ago I was having a conversation with the head of Sony Television, and we were kind of pontificating about what it might look like in 10 years.
Yeah.
And I think we had just brought it. This was like the A1E or maybe the A9F or first or second year Sony 4K OLED, and he was like, at some point, this will be the worst TV you can buy. I was like, imagine the day.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And obviously the technology, all around the board continues to improve in a lot of ways. And ultimately the big winner is the customer, where they're able to, get the most kind of performance out of their television. They get to watch, their favorite movies. I was looking at some data earlier this week about, obviously during kind of the pandemic, people are going to the movie theaters, but there's been this paradigm shift. A lot of people are taking advantage of kind of premium on demand, kind of streaming services, and that's become a large and maybe even the largest part of their theater going experience isn't in the theater anymore. And so while Sony has always talked about creative intent, and that continues to be our mantra, we feel as more kind of consumers continue to maybe shift away from, maybe I only go see Top Gun Maverick because Tom Cruise did a PSA and he told me, I had to go. But
don't turn on motion interpolation.
Don't turn on motion, President. But maybe going to the movies is something that for a typical consumer, maybe that becomes a really special occasion, and then watching TV becomes a larger part of kind of their overall mix. And we feel that Sony is really well positioned to continue to kind of deliver a really amazing and kind of second to none experience when it comes to kind of watching movies and your favorite TV shows, video games, kind of in the home. And that's really what we want to do. And the A75 is really designed for us to strengthen the overall kind of position that we have in the space. It is what we're calling a limited release. Okay. It is designed to kind of roll out for the holiday season. This isn't like a Black Friday doorbuster, where you can get like a 500-inch TV for $2, but there's only one per state, and you don't know which store it's at. It's not that kind of holiday model, but we did decide to bring it out to coincide with the holiday kind of season. It'll be available at the beginning of October, so just right around the corner. It's currently right now. If you want to learn more about it, you can go to Sony.com. And you can read the specs and look at the full features on those, but it'll be available here, very shortly. And I do think it is going to drive, more interest in general into the OLED, non-QD, non-MLA kind of OLED discussion for people that were maybe on the fence or, waiting for the A95L to come out and then see, is it as good as we hope? And then before they make their decision, and now at least from Sony's perspective, we'll have a couple within the OLED family you can choose, in addition to mini LED, full array, all of which take advantage of Sony processing.
Well, I know a couple of years ago we had the A9S Master Series. You had the little one, and I think that confused people. The A9G was there, and but what you said about streaming, which I think is most interesting, Rob, is that we talk about 4K discs and physical media, but now that we're all streaming, YouTube TV. Upscaling is more important now than I think it was even with the cable TV days because of and how many Netflix movies are really 1080p or Disney movies. Like they're not all 4K, and Prime and things you can buy now, Apple TV. The fact that the TV can upscale the way it does and process the way it does, I think is what makes Sony that option. Forget about just going to the movies, but streaming in general.
Yeah, my general advice to customers has always been, and it's a very, very general rule. If you start with kind of the best quality content, and I don't mean the types of movies you watch, I don't care, right? But low compression, right? Blu-ray, then compared to streaming, processing plays a lesser role if the quality of the content is high. Now there's still a difference, and it is there, but the big difference is when you are going for the lower quality kind of content. So my recommendation to people in general is you always want to get a level of processing that is at least equal to your viewing habits today and in the near future that you can kind of predict. And if you're going to continue to cut more cables, if you're going to invest more in streaming, then processing plays a larger role in the overall kind of mix of kind of things you should think about. And the last piece of advice I would give, just general kind of TV kind of purchasers, is this. And this also goes back to the A75L. The one thing you cannot improve post-purchase is the picture quality. You can't go buy more pixels. You can't go to the Sony website and, kind of add more pixels to your cart, or, buy a new processor and, hot swap it in the back of the TV.
I wish you could do that, actually.
That'd be great. I still have my same TV for 20. I just put a new processor. So the picture quality that you purchase, that's what you get. And there's going to be firmware updates, and we try to keep improving as we go. But that's the platform. What about audio? Well, if you grow out of the audio capabilities of the television, or if the no television that you're currently shopping for totally fits your needs, you can always supplement it with a soundbar or replace it entirely. You can do a receiver and speakers. You have these other kind of options to offset the audio in the TV if it doesn't quite meet your needs or expectations. And same thing with the interface. If you're like, I love Sony TV, but there's this brand new streaming service called Super Mega Happy Fun Time Streaming Shows, and it's only available through random platform X. Yeah. It's like but you probably can go for $40, buy a little stick that plugs in, and then you can stream through that stick. So you can supplement the UI, you can supplement the audio. You could put crazy, stands or wall mounts on the TV to orient it in lots of different ways, but you can never get better picture quality. So that's the one compromise the A75L doesn't make, is you get the Sony OLED processing. It's 120 hertz panel. It's cognitive processor XR. It's the kind of the current generation, WRGB OLED panel. So it's got all that foundation. The question is, are you okay with some of these other, cost-saving kind of changes for your particular use case, because you already have a solution for it, or what you want to save a buck? That's where it exists.
I'd say I would definitely be, because as long as we're not, I think when we have some of these step-down units, when the picture quality or something like XR Clear is left out, that's a very tangible loss for me.
Yeah, there's a big, for example, in Sony's lineup, like the A77L, to the X90 for the 2023 models, going from direct LED to full array. That's a big, foundational change in picture quality. And then the processor kind of on top. So the X77 is a fantastic, model for people looking for more budget kind of friendly, but still Sony kind of processing televisions. But there's a big difference kind of there. There's also another big difference for me is going from 60 hertz panels to 120 hertz panels, not just for gaming, but just, fast moving sports in general benefit from that platform. And so those do exist in Sony's lineup. We have some 60 hertz, we have some direct LEDs, we have basically a two-tiered, actually three-tiered processing approach. But once you get to the XR models, they're all using the same brain, right? They all have advanced backlight solutions, or OLED, which is a different version of the same thing. Those are kind of cost of doing business. They're all Dolby Vision, they're all Dolby Atmos. Those are not the things that we trim off to say this is a mid-tier television. Picture quality, creative intent, that's the mantra for Sony from X90L and even X77L, but X90L and up. The question is, what other things do you need? Or how much closer can we get you to creative intent through primarily more advanced backlight and contrast manipulation? That's the difference between full array to mini LED, OLED, and QD-OLED in and of itself isn't a real difference in terms, primarily of contrast. There is some, because it's much brighter, but it's color on top of it. And that's how I think about Sony's lineup. It's how close to creative intent do you want to be? Do you want to be in the room with the director,
Yeah.
Looking over his shoulder at the scene, going, "What color is that dress supposed to be?" They got a TV for that.
Yeah, well, I do like the flexibility of image now too with Sony, and the fact that you can make things look live color, saturation can be adjusted. You can make things vibrant and bright, and you can really make it look the way you want. I think it has one of the best standard modes in the business out of the box. Can we quickly touch on the 83-inch A80L
Sure.
as it's being compared to the A90J, and then I know that's something that people have discussed, that it may have the same heat sink as the A90 and have the same performance. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So there are a couple of differences with the A80. Sorry, I was about to say A83L. That's a whole new TV. That's a super secret. Don't tell anybody. The 83-inch A80L.
That one we're talking about next week.
This year, these A's and 80s, it's like marble mouth. I can't enunciate. So with 83-inch A80L, it is, from a chassis perspective, sharing a lot of the same parts from its predecessor, the A90. So that'd be the A90J.
Series for you guys that don't know, it's probably the most popular Sony OLED ever made. A90J Master Series. It's legendary.
Absolutely. So absolute monster.
Yeah.
And then A90 or A80L, kind of the 83-inch, kind of shares some of the chassis with that. And so as a byproduct, there are some things that make it unique. So you mentioned heatsink, but I'll ask you to start with audio. Exclusive to Sony Master Series TVs is the ability to run speaker wire directly from your receiver to the TV. So this is different from acoustic center sync. This is where your TV is acting as an additional center channel to your sound bar or to the center channel that you have wired up to your receiver. With Master Series, the TV legitimately is the center channel speaker. So it has speaker terminals on the back. The 83-inch A80L has that because it's the chassis from essentially the previous year. So they kind of came along for the ride. The analogy I think I was telling you earlier, it's kind of like, when you buy the upgrade, when you're looking at a car and you get the upgrade with the leather seats, it's like the moonroof comes with it.
Yeah, like, whoa.
You just get it at that point. So that's one. And the other one, of course, is specific with kind of a more active kind of thermal management solution, heatsink or whatever, right? Is also part of the chassis. But that being said, it would not be appropriate for me to then say, therefore, the 83-inch A80L is this mini master or Master Series adjacent television. When it comes to heatsink specifically, my personal philosophy on it is very simple. It's not about the heatsink. The heatsink is not the point. The point is, in some cases, to hit certain performance abilities, you may have to take a more active approach for thermal management. And so in the case of the kind of the previous Master Series kind of OLEDs from Sony, and in this case, the 83-inch version, in order to maximize what the panel is capable of doing, we need to take a more active thermal management position. But that doesn't mean that I could add a heatsink to, let's say, the A75L, and suddenly it would be better. It's already capable of doing everything that it can. It's just so efficient, it doesn't get hot. But putting it in dry ice doesn't make it brighter. It just makes it cold. And when you add a heatsink, that's a component from a manufacturing perspective that goes into the cost, right? And so if a heatsink is not necessary to achieve the performance the panel is capable of, we don't put it in. For us, it's not a marketing checkbox. And I feel kind of bad because we were like the first ones to put it in and make a big deal of it. And then it seemed like the next year or 2 years later, everyone was like, well, look at our heatsink. And it's kind of like, it never really was about the heatsink.
So you talked about that.
We kind of created it, and then it's like, maybe we shouldn't have.
So you said that in our last interview, we were talking about the A80. I think it was the A80K, and you're like, I mean, I feel kind of bad because everyone was buying the A90J because it was this brighter, but the A80K does it too. But
it's just
it's wild.
In that case, you get the brightness because of a more efficient panel, a newer generation of panel. You know, it's not from, you know, the thermals aren't there. You know, the thermal limiter doesn't exist in that particular panel at that particular size. So with the 83-inch, again, we take a little more of an active approach for that unique combination of panel and size. But again, I don't want people that are watching this to go in with kind of the expectation that, oh, yeah, the 77-inch A80L and the 83-inch ADL have the same model name, but, you know, low key, the 83-inch is this other thing. It isn't. It's just a bigger thing.
Yeah. But I would look at the 80L as being, and I'll get killed in the comments for this, just be having the XR clear superior to the A90J.
Yeah, absolutely. And the simple fact of the matter is, yes, that when you have two TVs that are essentially capable of producing, you know, similar, if not the same kind of contrast range in general, right? They're so similar, they might as well be identical. The variation is going to be the normal variation that exists from panel to panel, not so much from series to series. And you add to that this advanced processing, yes, there is a noticeable difference. Now, that doesn't mean, now, don't get me wrong, if you own one of those older Sony TVs, this new TV doesn't make your TV a bad TV. Your TV didn't get worse. You know,
well, you know, you're the only person I can say this to, is that if you're tall, just because someone is taller, it doesn't make you less tall.
Yeah.
Considering you're 3 inches taller than I am, I don't all of a sudden become less tall because you're taller.
It means that occasionally I get to be Little Spoon. Not all the time, but occasionally, hey, it's nice. I'm just saying.
When I see you, I don't go, oh, I'm no longer a tall guy. In closing, Rob, I do want you to touch a little bit on the audio combination with the sound bars, the HTA9, and this new group of receivers, and that center channel combination that also the new A75 also uses. I just think that using that, and I don't touch on it enough, not just from the sound bars and the HTA9, which I actually have the remote right here. I have two sets of them, one with my A80J, but the receivers as well. There's just that extra feature, you know, if you can just speak on that, and then I'll let you go.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So again, this is called acoustic center sync. And first, let me explain the logic behind it. Normally, you buy this TV, it's got audio, right? And you decide that you need more audio. And that's fine, right? Your room might be really big, or maybe you have a hard time hearing dialogue. You really want a bunch of bass, or whatever the reason is. You're like, the TV is not cutting, you know, it for me. I want to do something different. Here's the bummer, at least up until now. Some of the money that you paid, you bought the TV, went toward those speakers that now you're not even going to use. And that kind of sucks, right? It's like when you go to, you know, sometimes, especially during the pandemic, some restaurants were trying to get you to come out there like, you know, buy one get four free. I'm like, no, thank you. I'll buy the one. Please don't give me 4 extra. No, thank you. So it's just kind of like, you know, it's unfortunate that money doesn't go to something you end up using. And so Sony kind of thought about this. And what we decided to do is to say, when you add a Sony soundbar or a Sony receiver, you are not replacing the audio in the TV. You can, you could choose to do that, but you don't have to do that. Acoustic center sync allows the TV to still be part of the audio solution. And the reason we think that's important is this immersive experience that we call sound from screen. It's where, you know, your eyes are looking in the center of the screen. It's where the action is happening. And we want the audio to feel like it's coming directly from your favorite, you know, character as they're delivering a line of dialogue, rather than from the bottom of the TV. And if you have a 75, 83, 85-inch, 98-inch TV, I'm sorry, the sun is moving, so I'm trying to.
Yeah, see, it's got you right in the middle.
I'm trying to dodge it as we go through this.
Your focus is amazing.
But there's, you know, there's a big physical separation between the center of the screen and kind of where the TV speakers are. So that's why we like sound from screen in general. And a sound bar is even lower relative to the screen.
Yes.
And so we take advantage of something, to give you a little technical explanation, we take advantage of something called the Haas effect, H-A-A-S. And essentially it goes like this. This is the way that humans kind of hear stuff. if you hear the same frequency from two physically separate locations with a sufficiently short delay, we're talking milliseconds between the two, whichever one hits you first, it's the only one you're going to think you heard. So the TV gives you, it fires slightly ahead of your soundbar or your center channel speaker, and you get the performance bump of the larger center channel or your big beefy soundbar or whatever, but your brain still says all of that sound came from here where my eyes are looking.
Where the characters are and the action.
Where the characters are, but I'm getting the performance lift or the difference in audio that you're trying to kind of supplement or add to the television that the television couldn't deliver, by itself. And we can do that with both soundbars and receivers. And then again, further being able to customize the experience for our A series soundbars, there's a built-in subwoofer. You can add a wireless subwoofer to it for more. You can add wireless rear speakers. So you kind of start from this foundation of, excellent picture. You got the Sony TV, so that we know the picture is going to be solid, and a good foundation for audio and sound from screen. So we're checking a lot of boxes. And then from there, you can start to build the specific experience that you're looking for, or that your unique kind of application requires. Is that a soundbar? Is it a soundbar and a wireless subwoofer? Is it a soundbar and rears? Soundbar sub and rears? Is it a receiver? You can even add the wireless subwoofer from our soundbar, and you can run that wireless subwoofer with our receivers wirelessly.
Oh,
You can add Sony's wireless rear speakers for our soundbar and run them wirelessly with our receiver. So, while I think most people spending, hundreds of dollars on a receiver, might already be in kind of the hardwired camp. The idea is we want to build an ecosystem that is maximally flexible.
Yeah.
And that's what we've tried to do with our audio solution. And so this acoustic center sync is the technical kind of connection that allows these receivers and soundbars to share the center channel information with the TV. But that hopefully explains kind of the overall ecosystem and the philosophy behind it.
And that's I know that the A90 and the A80 first started with that, but this has been a new implementation in this last year, correct? Or
yeah. So essentially the TVs last year launched with it, but it was about, I can't remember when the soundbars launched last year, but it was funny because on the TV there was this connection that said S Center, and we hadn't announced the soundbars, so we hadn't announced the technology. And people were like, "What does this do?" And I'm like, "I've never seen that before."
And I've seen in the comments too. I can't exactly remember what it is, but some people have gotten extremely creative with their Sony receivers, and the way they're able to use the codecs and the way they're able to create more channels. But what's interesting with the audio, though, Rob, is I saw the A95L's audio was extraordinary. And everyone in the comments says, "Oh, I can't wait to use the audio and then add to it." And then I had seen the Sharp new LED and even Hisense's new UX LED, and their audio is phenomenal. A lot of speakers built into it. The biggest shame, though, is if you want to take that next step, you have to forego them.
Yep.
Where with Sony, it just seems like you have that equal audio, but you can build on it, which is a waste because those other TVs, they're robust. You can see the speakers on them, which I like. But the problem is if you're not going to use them, they're just sitting there wasted. So,
and the other thing is, people's requirements change. So, this, but I recently moved, right? Yeah. And so in my living room previously, I had a pair of towers. Yeah. That's what I had in my space. But in the new space here, the towers don't fit. So I've now I have an HDA9, there as well. And the audio solution I originally had tied to several TVs in my old house are different now in my new house. I've kind of remixed and matched the TVs and the audio. And so, again, I like the idea philosophically because I don't like it when a customer is kind of forced to pay for something that they're not going to use. That's kind of like a bummer. Yep. To kind of have that, that scenario play out. Now, sometimes it's just hard to get around it. It's like, no, you can't buy a Sony TV that doesn't have a UI.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can't.
We don't offer that. We don't offer that kind of solution. But with audio specifically, it plays such an important component in the overall experience. I mean, the reality is, if you think about the last time you laughed, watching a movie, or your heart started pounding and it was stressful, it had everything to do with the audio and nothing to do with the video.
Yeah.
I remember, this is a weird reference, but the first time I watched Crimson Tide, right? Gene Hackman,
Oh, yeah. I was just watching that on YouTube like a day ago.
I was physically, people say edge of your seat. I was physically like on the edge of my seat. But if you just mute that and read the subtitles, I'd fall asleep.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's the audio is supremely important. Absolutely. And so we've really decided to kind of reinvest our efforts in making, not only really good audio, but making it easier for customers to get access to audio in ways that make sense for them, for their specific needs and their specific budgets.
I mean, I think we talked about the processing, Rob, and the ecosystem. We talk about catching up, and you realize that the processing is not something you can catch up to. It takes a lot of work, a lot of engineering, a lot of time, but the ecosystem you can't build in a single day. So for all these other audio solutions to say, now we have these receivers and now we have these, it's like you said, robust. And I like that you're able to pick up something like the A75 and enjoy the audio it has, but then surpass any other Sony lineup with your own audio as you can afford it, which I think is fantastic. Before I let you go, because I meant for this one to be quick, but you and I can't ever hang out quick.
No worries.
But I'm going to see you in a few days at the Value Electronics King of TV shootout, where I know you guys will be like worried parents watching the A75L and
taking its first steps.
So we're going to see you on that stream. But I can talk to you for hours, and we do talk for hours. But Rob, I really appreciate you taking the time. And I know we're going to break down even after the A95L officially launches and really do a deep dive into it. I'm really looking forward to it. And I do want to talk about even after that, Sony's plans and how the 2023 really mapped out for you guys. But we'll save that for the next one. But I want to thank you from myself, my community. I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm always very humbled that you're here. I really enjoy talking to you, and I can't wait to see you in person in a few days.
It's absolutely my pleasure. As always, Brian, I really appreciate the opportunity to come here and answer questions and have a really good time. And just like you, I'm looking forward to this weekend, hanging out.
Yeah.
Hanging out in a completely dark room with like 50 people. So I'm really excited to live stream, which I think will certainly liven up, the experience. And again, we're excited to finally allow people kind of a chance to kind of see the A95L, what it's capable of doing, how it's changed since last year QD-OLED first launched, and to see if that's a TV that's right for them. It should be on their Christmas wish list, or if A75 is going to fit kind of more of their budget or their requirement kind of needs. But essentially, we got lots of solutions for you. But anytime you want to have me back to pepper me with questions, I'm happy to do it.
Well, and I mean, the one thing I'll say personally, Rob, is I always felt like in the coverage of the shootout, a lot of people like you, other than being on the panels quickly, aren't able to get to talk to you this way. And since I met you, how many number of years ago, we would have these conversations off camera, and it was never practical to grab a camera and then say, "Can you say that again?"
So first of all, it's never thought out. So people ask me, "Can you repeat that?" I'm like, "No, I can't repeat. I don't even know what I said."
Yeah, it's like. But I think that's what I love about these. That's why I don't edit these down. That's why I leave them organic, because I think people love to just sit here and hear you discuss it. And I think also having FOMO and I do the shootout and discuss it, having you been able to jump on the mic and talk about what you're seeing, and the X95L will also be there. It's not officially competing. The Z9K will be there, but you giving context. And I love about and as we leave, what I love about what we've always talked about is that if I didn't know you were from Sony, the way you speak about the other manufacturers and the way you give credit to what is out there made me trust you immediately. and you were just a fan of the technology, whether it was from another company, and you were able to be very impartial. And I learned a lot from us just sitting there. But now we'll be on camera, so I hope you can share some of that with the audience when we're doing the stream.
Absolutely, it'd be my pleasure. Again, I'm a huge fan of the technology in the space. I think ultimately when manufacturers like Sony and the other big brands and even some of the other not as big brands, when we compete, consumers win. It requires, the company that I work for that pays my salary to not rest on our laurels, but to continue to push and move forward ahead. And the winner is always the consumer. So I'm looking forward to it, man. And I appreciate the kind words. It means a lot.
All right, Rob, I will see you in a few days, my friend.
All right, brother. Talk to you then.
Bye-bye.
It's better to burn out.